They don't want you to know this, but every ancient culture, spiritual text, and sacred tradition has warned us. Evil spirits are real and they prey on the unaware. Whether you call them demons, negative energies, or dark entities, they are not just figments of imagination or superstition. These forces thrive in fear, chaos, and weakness, and they subtly infiltrate your life when you're most vulnerable. But here's the shocking truth. Protection is not about rituals or symbols alone. It's about spiritual awareness, energy mastery, and inner clarity. If you've ever felt drained for no reason, plagued by anxiety that isn't yours, or shadowed by something you can't explain, this message will awaken you. This is your guide to understanding what these dark forces really are and how to shield your soul with unshakable power and truth. Evil spirits thrive in unawareness not because they are more powerful than us, but because we allow them access through the blind spots of our own consciousness. They exist and operate in dimensions that are subtle, psychological, emotional, and energetic. Realms that most people neglect because they're not visible to the naked eye. And that very ignorance is their playground. Imagine living in a house where some rooms have never been cleaned or explored. You don't go there, you don't think about them, and yet those forgotten corners slowly rot, attract infestation, and decay begins from within. That's exactly how evil spirits work. They inhabit the unseen corners of your soul, the shadows of your unresolved thoughts, the chaos you suppress, the emotions you refuse to feel. They don't need to attack from the outside when your inside is already unguarded. Most people assume that protection from evil spirits means wearing crystals, burning incense, or chanting ancient words, but the truth is far deeper. If your awareness is clouded, if your perception is dulled, if you've numbed yourself to pain, intuition, and higher knowing, you become a vessel ready for occupation. These spirits don't arrive with horns and fire. They come in quietly, as self-doubt, as chronic fatigue, as intrusive thoughts, as addictions you can't shake, as anxiety that never leaves, as bitterness that tastes like your own voice. They use your blindness to build their stronghold within you, and they grow roots in your unconscious behaviors. The spiritual world operates under the law of resonance. You attract what you are unaware of and aligned with. When you don't question your emotional reactions, when you move through life reacting instead of reflecting, when you don't recognize where your feelings originate from or what energy you are absorbing from others, you are essentially living with an open back door in a bad neighborhood. Evil doesn't always look evil. Sometimes it's a whisper of jealousy, the temptation to lie, a pleasure that feels good but leads to shame. It doesn't crash through the front door. It seeps in through neglected thoughts and unnoticed agreements you've made with despair, anger, or revenge. Unawareness makes you vulnerable because it disconnects you from your higher self. The part of you that sees clearly, loves deeply, and knows truth intuitively. And when you are disconnected from truth, you are easily manipulated by illusion. Demonic energies are masters of illusion. They masquerade as things you want, whisper lies you think are your own thoughts, and distract you just enough to keep you looping in low vibration. Most people walk around unaware of how their childhood wounds, unspoken resentments, or unresolved guilt open them up to attachments, energy drains, or even possession. Not the horror movie kind, but the subtle kind that robs you of joy, peace, and power. Unawareness is not just ignorance. It's a lack of discipline in maintaining inner clarity. It's scrolling for hours while your soul begs for stillness. It's allowing your mind to replay fear instead of choosing courage. It's ignoring your body's signals, your spirit's cries, and the guidance that constantly whispers to slow down and listen. Evil thrives when you don't. But here's the miracle. Once you become aware, truly aware, of how your energy works, what influences your emotions, how your thoughts are shaped, and where your power resides, evil spirits lose access instantly. The light of awareness is the death of darkness. You don't have to fight them, you just have to see them. Shine the flashlight of attention into every room of your inner world. Speak the truth about your wounds. Sit still with your thoughts. Question your fears. Observe your anger. Name your shame. Awareness doesn't mean perfection. It means presence. And when you are fully present in your being, nothing dark can occupy your soul without your permission. Evil spirits are opportunists, not gods. They are parasites that can only live where your soul has been forgotten. But when you return to yourself, when you wake up, when you take responsibility for your energy, your choices, and your healing, you become spiritually sovereign. And no demon, no matter how ancient or clever, can survive in the presence of a fully awake soul. They exploit your emotional wounds not with force, but with familiarity, slipping into the cracks of your unresolved pain like water through a broken foundation, seeping quietly, invisibly, until your very sense of self is saturated with confusion, heaviness, and spiritual exhaustion that you can't explain. And then the fear sets in. The fear sets in, limiting your possibilities with incomplete thoughts. That fear tries. Evil spirits do not crash into your life through grand entrances. They creep in gently through the trauma you've tried to forget, through the heartbreak you never healed from, through the shame you buried so deep you began calling it your personality. Every wound you avoid, every emotion you suppress, every painful memory you leave unexamined becomes fertile ground for dark energies to grow. They don't create the pain, they colonize what's already wounded. That lingering bitterness toward a parent, that betrayal from a friend you never forgave, that unspoken grief from loss. They become emotional portals, open gateways that attract low-frequency entities whose only job is to keep you stuck, silent, afraid, and disconnected from your light. Demons feed on repetition. They love the cycle of self-pity, the loop of victimhood, the echo of your unhealed stories, because these cycles create emotional residue, and that residue becomes their sustenance. The longer you stay hurt without healing, the more they settle in, wrapping themselves around your identity until you begin to believe that your pain is who you are. You start to think, I am anxious, I am angry, I am unworthy. But those are not identities. They're wounds being echoed by something that wants to keep you bound. Evil spirits don't just attach to pain, they speak through it. They mimic your inner voice, turning up the volume on your insecurities until you can no longer tell where your pain ends and their influence begins. That's why self-sabotage feels so personal, because it uses your memories against you. Your own mind becomes the battlefield, and unless you heal those wounds, unless you face the emotional truth with courage and compassion, you will unconsciously act on thoughts that aren't even yours. Have you ever wondered why, just when you're about to break through, just when things are finally going well, you feel an urge to destroy, to retreat, to isolate, to lash out? That's the wound speaking, amplified by the spirit that latched onto it. These entities thrive when you stay numb, distracted, or dismissive of your own suffering. That's why modern life is filled with noise, so you never go quiet enough to feel what's really hurting, because to feel is to awaken, and awakening begins the eviction process. Your pain is not the problem, your avoidance is. Every wound is a doorway, not just for demons to enter, but for healing to be accessed. But healing isn't always soft. It demands that you revisit what you swore you'd never feel again. It asks you to cry, to scream, to sit in silence with the ghosts of your past and say, I see you. I no longer fear you. I no longer serve you. That's when the energy begins to shift. That's when the grip loosens. Evil spirits cannot survive in the presence of truth. And truth lives in your emotional honesty. When you stop numbing yourself, when you stop blaming others and start owning your story, not with guilt, but with love, you begin to reclaim your soul territory. You stop being a house with open windows and start becoming a temple with sacred walls. Protection isn't just about keeping darkness out. It's about becoming so whole, so integrated, that darkness has nowhere to hide inside you. That's why the path of healing is sacred. It doesn't just restore your peace, it removes the feeding grounds of evil. You begin to see your anger not as a flaw, but as a wound that needed protection. You begin to see your sadness not as weakness, but as the body's call for release. And you must become your power. The body needs to be strong and healthy. 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 The body needs to be strong, and in that understanding, you reclaim fragments of yourself that were stolen through pain. When you heal your emotional wounds, you aren't just making peace with your past. You are cutting off the energetic food supply of spiritual parasites that can only survive in your suffering. So the next time a wound resurfaces, don't run from it, sit with it, listen to it. Ask what it needs to feel whole, because every tear you shed, in truth, is an exorcism. Every moment of honest grief is spiritual armor being reforged. And every time you choose to feel rather than flee, you're not just healing, you're protecting yourself in the most powerful way possible. By making your soul a place where only light can live. Your energy field is your armor, and the most overlooked truth in spiritual protection is that your aura, your energetic presence, is not only real, but constantly interacting with everything around you, absorbing, deflecting, and transmitting vibrations whether you're aware of it or not. And in a world full of unseen forces, both divine and deceptive, it is this invisible layer around your physical body that acts as your first line of defense against dark, parasitic energies, entities, and tempties and influences. And just like your immune system protects your body from disease, your energy field protects your soul from spiritual contamination. But here's the catch. Just as the immune system can weaken through poor habits, stress, and neglect, your aura too can thin, crack, or become contaminated when you live unconsciously, emotionally overwhelmed, spiritually disconnected, or surrounded by people and environments that constantly pull you into lower vibrational states. And most people don't realize that every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every word you speak, and every environment you immerse yourself in either strengthens or weakens your energetic armor. Which means that protection isn't just about prayer or rituals, it's about lifestyle, intention, and the frequency you consistently embody. Because evil spirits don't just latch onto people randomly. They are attracted to vibrational matches. Anger attracts anger, fear attracts manipulation, despair attracts entities that amplify your helplessness. So when your energy field is clogged with unresolved trauma, chaotic thoughts, toxic relationships, and unconscious behaviors, you become an open signal for these forces to attach, feed, and influence you without your conscious permission. And the real power lies in understanding that your energy field can be cultivated, cleansed, and fortified daily, not through fear, but through awareness and discipline, not through temptation or starting with emotional hygiene. Because emotions are the fuel of your energetic signature. Joy, gratitude, love, peace. These uplift your frequency and create a luminous, almost impenetrable aura, while resentment, guilt, jealousy, and rage create weak spots, holes through which spiritual parasites can enter. And this is why mastering your emotional state isn't just personal development, it's spiritual warfare. And maintaining a high frequency aura doesn't mean pretending to be happy all the time, but rather owning your feelings, expressing them consciously, transmuting pain into wisdom, and choosing not to live in reaction but in response, in presence, and in alignment. And equally important is the cleansing of your energetic space. Just like you shower your body, you must also clear the debris from your aura. And this can be done through practices like meditation, breathwork, grounding in nature, salt baths, sound frequencies, chanting, or simply by spending time in silence, where your soul can breathe, recalibrate, and expand without interference. And we must understand that our energy is also affected by who we spend time with. Humans are like tuning forks, and if you constantly surround yourself with people who gossip, complain, manipulate, or drain your energy, your field will gradually adjust to that frequency, unless you consciously protect and recalibrate, because spiritual hygiene also includes boundaries, saying no, walking away from chaos, protecting your peace as if your life depends on it. Because in truth it does, and perhaps the most powerful way to armor your aura is through alignment. When your actions align with your highest truth, when you live with purpose, when you follow divine principles of compassion, humility, courage, and integrity, your energy becomes coherent, sharp, clear, and radiant. And this radiance acts as a spiritual repellent, a light that repulses darkness effortlessly, because dark forces cannot attach to a being who is self-awareness, heart-centered, and energetically sovereign. And this is why truly awakened individuals seem untouchable, because their energy is not chaotic, not confused, not splintered. They know who they are. They take care of their vessel. They discipline their mind. They honor their emotions. They purify their space. They walk in truth. And that alignment creates an aura so strong, so luminous, that lower entities cannot penetrate it. And so if you truly want to protect yourself from evil forces, you must stop looking outside and begin within. Build your energy field as you would build a sacred temple, with clarity, reverence, discipline, and devotion. Because when your inner world is clean, your energy shines. And when your energy shines, darkness cannot stay. Your aura, after all, is not just your protection. Your aura, after all, is not just your protection. It is your message to the unseen world, declaring what energies are welcome and what will be rejected, with the full force of your awakened light. They masquerade as your thoughts, slipping in so subtly that you never question their origin, never pause to ask, is this voice really mine? And that's the dark genius of how evil spirits operate. Not by shouting from the shadows, but by whispering through the familiar, using your own inner dialogue as a disguise, mimicking your tone, your fears, your past experiences, until their influence feels indistinguishable from your own thinking. And before you even realize it, your mind becomes a battlefield where the enemy wears your face and speaks in your voice. It begins innocently, just a passing negative thought, a flicker of self-doubt, a hint of anxiety. But instead of brushing it off, you entertain it, ruminate, spiral, and that's when they dig deeper, rooting into your subconscious, subtly directing your focus toward fear, guilt, anger, and despair. Because demons don't always come as nightmares or apparitions. They often come as overthinking, obsessive loops, irrational guilt, chronic self-sabotage, and emotional heaviness that doesn't align with the truth of who you are. And this is because the mind, when unguarded, becomes a playground for spiritual manipulation, especially when you've been conditioned to believe that every thought you think must be yours or must be true. But thoughts can be implanted, inspired, and distorted by unseen forces, especially when your energy is low, your boundaries are weak, and your emotional state is fragile, which is why mastering your mind is not just a matter of mental health, it's spiritual survival. Because the more passive you are with your thoughts, the easier it is for external influences to hijack your inner world. And they do this most effectively through repetition. The same toxic narrative playing over and over. You're not good enough. Nobody loves you. It's too late. You'll never change, until it feels like fact, when in reality, it's a spiritual infection masquerading as a mental habit. And here's the most dangerous part. The longer these voices go unchecked, the more you align your behavior, your decisions, your identity with them, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy where the lie becomes your life. And this is not just psychology. It's spiritual warfare disguised as overthinking. Because when you are so entangled in internal noise that you can't hear your intuition, your truth, or the voice of your soul, you become disconnected from divine guidance and vulnerable to deception. And while you may think, it's just how I think, consider this. Would a soul connected to love, truth, and divine power speak to itself with hatred, fear, and limitation? No. Because your true inner voice is calm, clear, wise, and empowering. Anything else is interference. And recognizing this interference is the first step to reclaiming your mental sovereignty. Because once you see the imposter thoughts for what they are, foreign invaders feeding off your energy, you can begin to detach, observe, and reclaim control. But it requires vigilance, awareness, and spiritual discernment. The ability to pause and ask, does this thought uplift or destroy me? Does it align with my highest self or with fear? And in doing so, you create space. And in that space, the truth begins to return. You begin to realize that not every thought is worth believing. Not every emotion needs to be owned. And not every inner voice deserves your trust. Because your mind is not a public square, it's sacred territory, and you must guard it as such. Through meditation, prayer, conscious inner dialogue, and refusal to entertain thoughts that diminish your light. And once you train yourself to recognize these false voices, to challenge them, to reject them, to replace them with affirmations grounded in truth, you break the spell. And the spirits that fed off your confusion begin to lose their grip, because they cannot survive in clarity, in presence, in the light of your conscious awareness. So next time you hear that inner critic, that persistent doubt, that urge to self-destruct, don't just analyze it, question it, confront it, disown it if it doesn't serve your highest truth. And remember that protecting your mind is not about controlling every thought, but discerning which thoughts are yours, which are programming, and which are spiritual parasites dressed in your vocabulary. Because when you finally reclaim your mental landscape,